of the church, then they will do what they think is the right thing to do. And, even somebody who's a mature Christian who comes and joins your church or joins this church, just because they led something in the church that they were in before, that doesn't mean to say that's how the team runs here. So it's all about knowing expectations, having things set up, everybody knowing this is how we do it in GoChurch, or this is how we do it, in the church, in Mount Chapel, or whatever church you're a part of, because then we've set the right culture and everybody knows this is how we do it in GoChurch. So lots of people in church, and especially as church gets bigger, everyone hopes that somebody else will do it. Everybody hopes that somebody else will be in charge. People want to come in and they want to hide. But we want people to go, this is my family, this is my home, and to take up their place and their space and to fill it and accomplish what God has called them to do. So that's just a very quick overview of the systems. And hopefully I'm going to get this right. Yeah, good. And we're going to look at the ministry placement system. So you've got that in your book now. So it's 14, it says. So this is all about serving. This session is all about serving, joining a team, being part of a team. And, it could be a serve team, could be a dream team. Lots of churches call their teams different names, but this is all about serving. And as we go through and as we teach all the time, you need to think, what can we do now? What is applicable to us in our location and in the size of church that we are now and that we are going to be. So we've got 3 passages here we're going to look at. So 1 Corinthians 12:7 says, "Now to each one the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good." So to each one, that means to everyone. Okay, everyone has been given gifts. Why? For the common good. So everybody, we had somebody ask us in church, they came up to us. You know how Alan and I often say everybody is a leader. We see everybody as a leader. They came up to me and they said, well, even me, I can be a leader. We said, yes, you can be a leader. And it's down to what we expect and what we see, because everybody has a gift or gifts that can be used, skills. And then 1 Peter 4:10-11, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in its various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do so as one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. So again, everybody who's been given a gift needs to find their place to serve. And then Romans 12:4-8. For just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function, so in Christ we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us. If your gift is prophesying, then prophesy in accordance with your faith. If it is serving, then serve. If it is teaching, then teach. If it is to encourage, then give encouragement. If it is giving, then give generously. If it is to lead, do it diligently. If it is to show mercy, do it cheerfully. So again, all the time we'll be encouraged to use our gifts. So the purpose of this session is that during this session we want to help you develop a system of inviting, observing, orienting, scheduling, equipping, developing, and celebrating those who use their spiritual gifts in church. You know, we want everybody to be able to serve and to find that place to serve. But often the big question is, I need somebody on my team. How do I find them? And that's often the big question. So we're going to look at that today. So the team leader principle is put in play here. The pastor is most effective as part of a team on which they serve as the visionary leader. So remember, what do we say in GoChurch? We do everything in teams. So even right from the top, you know, we have the core team, or you have the new team, don't you? The SLT, and then you have the core team, and then we have the team leaders. So everybody is part of a team with the pastors as the visionary leaders. So ways to enlist volunteers. So here are different ways that you can get volunteers or people to serve. You know, some people, I'm not keen on the word volunteer, because volunteer means I choose to volunteer. And the Bible says that we should serve. So I'm not keen on the word volunteer, because actually I've already been told to serve by the Lord. Therefore, I need to find a place to serve. Whereas if you have that volunteer mentality, it's only when I choose to, when I want to. So I don't like that word. So the first one you could do is list ministry needs and share the list with your people. You know, and you can do that in different ways. You can have a board up. You can do it through the letters, the emails, different ways. But there are people who sit in our congregations and they don't know where to serve because they don't know where the holes are. Not that we fill holes here in GoChurch, but some people don't know that we need them. And also, when you have new people join a church, they don't know all the ministries that happen and all the different ways that they can serve, especially as a church grows and you have more opportunities and more ways to serve. Unless you make it obvious, people don't know. Number 2, you could preach a series of messages about serving and spiritual gifts. Who remembers I think we did it twice, where we had sign-up tables around the room for all the different ministries, and we did a very different Sunday morning, and people came in and we did a message about serving, but we asked the team leaders to make your tables exciting, and there was some really great creativeness that came out about the different teams that people could join, and then people could come in and go round and ask questions and find out what happens in those teams. Number 3 says offer a class about spiritual gifts. Well, and this is where we'll talk about the shape profile. You know, when you come in, you do partnership. Part of partnership is to do the shape profile, which is helping people discover the gifts that they have. So SHAPE is a acronym, thank you. It's spiritual, so it's spiritual about how did you find Jesus, and also answering questions, how you feel about yourself, whether you like to give or teach or care, and you answer between 1 to 5, and it lets you know what, or helps you know what your spiritual gift is. H is to do with your heart. A is your abilities, P is about your personality, and E is about the experiences that you've encountered. And actually, I've always found SHAPE really interesting. I did a SHAPE profile with one person in the church when I did the interview with them. They were so excited at the results because it confirmed that the job that they had was the right job for them. And they had been wondering about whether they should change jobs. And they went, no, that's the right job for me. So it was helpful outside of church as well as inside church. But help people discover their gifts. 4, empower every current volunteer to invite new volunteers onto their team. You know, the team that you are part of or that you lead, you are the best person to talk about your team because you know what you do, you know what the expectations are for your team. You're excited about it because hopefully you're serving on a team that you're passionate about, especially if you're leading that team. So you are the best person to go around and talk about it. Not wait for the pastors to go, who can join this team, but you to actively be praying and looking around the room, who would be good on this team. So remember, I've worked with children's ministry for a long time, so sorry if I talk about children's ministry quite a lot. But the one thing that I would always be doing is looking around the church and going, who do children like being with? Because that's a good indication of who would be good to join the children's ministry team. Who is always very good at talking to new people? Who somehow they have that ability to connect quickly? Well, there's the welcome team for you. Or being on the doors. But just think, who's good at hospitality? Who always brings things or is always... that's what they do. Maybe hospitality then. But it's looking out at people. But also it's praying. So one of the things I would do, like Alan said, he prayed and he asked the Lord to show him who. But we'd do the same. I'd be praying and going, show me, Lord, who in this room, and to go and speak to them. And it was like God would highlight them, and that's the person to go and speak to. 5, before all special events, list all the positions that the church needs to fill in order to help guests experience God. So this is a great way to discover giftings of people who aren't already serving. So when you have a big event like Fun Day or the Christmas events or Bonfire Night, or ask people who aren't yet serving to get involved, to discover what their giftings are and to see, what they can do. Because they might be willing for one, but you might then go, wow, they're really good at that. Let's get them on that team. So then, following an inviting process. So what do you do now? So you pray. Jesus said, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord for the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. We always in GoChurch like to fill gaps according to gifting, not just because we need a hole filled. So that's why it's important to discover what people's spiritual gifts are. And so, again, it goes back to what I've just said about praying who to invite. Look for people to invite to a specific need. I've just talked about that. Look for people who are not serving. So when you do one of those sign-up Sundays or something like that, it's really good because you're showing people where they can serve, but you also become aware of who is not serving and therefore might be available. Then ask them. There's lots of people in church who are waiting to be asked. A lot of the time in church, we go hands up and we expect people to come forward. But actually, Alan and I discovered when you're in a multicultural church, different cultures think in different ways. And I remember when we started what were life groups first, when we merged the two churches together here, and we were looking to who could lead, and we just asked people, if they felt they wanted to step forward. And we had a handful of people come forward. And then Matt and Julie put a list together, and Alan and I put a list together, because we knew the two churches, and they asked some people and we asked some people. And I remember going up to one lady and I just said, "We'd love you to be a life group leader." And she goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yes, you would be so good at it." I said, "Why didn't you put your name forward?" And she goes, "Oh, I was just waiting to be asked." And there are people who are just waiting to be asked. And we need to be bold enough to go and ask. Then cast vision. And Alan's already talked about this in the last session. How is being part of your ministry going to benefit them? How's it going to benefit the whole church? How does it benefit? How does that ministry benefit those who are the recipients? So what is your ministry about? How will their ministry delight God? And how will their ministry benefit you? Because they'll become part of, your team. So how does that help you? So you need to be good at casting vision and exciting people about the ministry, the team that you are part of and that you run. And it's the same if you are a grow group leader, a small group leader, and you need an assistant. You need to be able to cast vision for that assistant to want to be an assistant, that person to want to be an assistant. Then offer them an opportunity to observe. If say, "Hey, why don't you come next Sunday and see what we do?" So you're not asking them to serve straight then, but you're asking them to come, observe, and to see. And we want to make sure that they have a good time when they come and check it out. We often, especially when somebody first joins the team, we often pair people up with a weak person because we see, this team is weak, so we need more people there. But that doesn't give somebody a good experience of knowing how a team is. So when you ask somebody to come and observe, they need to come and observe the best. So who are the best people on your team? Who always fulfills the role as you have asked them to? Who always accomplishes it, right? And who also, at the end, clears away, right? Who is the best person? Because that gives them a good idea of what the role should be. And so in children's ministry, particularly, there are teams where, teams you have to come before the Sunday morning starts. So in children's ministry, when we would say to people to come and observe, we ask them to come right at the beginning so they see the whole setup before church starts at 11. Then we say stay afterwards as well so they can see the clearing up. And that's one of the biggest places where we see people don't stick with teams is because they don't understand the expectations on them. And so if you don't say to people, actually, we need you to arrive at 10 o'clock because we have set up, and you won't be free until whatever time it finishes, then you're not helping somebody join your team well because they don't know all the expectations on them. And, there are times I've had to, with a couple of people, I would vary it because you got to remember people have lives. So if you've got a single parent who has a real heart for children and wants to serve on children's ministry, and they haven't got a car, they're coming in on public transport, for example, and their public transport doesn't get there till 10:30, you can't say to someone, sorry, you can't join the team, because if they have a real heart for children's ministry and a real passion for it and everything else is right, You have to learn to be a little bit flexible because that person really wants to try and get there. So it's having that right heart for people as well in the middle of everything, and knowing where you can slightly adjust for somebody without causing the whole team to collapse, if you know what I mean. So, do background checks if you need to. So obviously, children's ministry need to do background checks. And then, set up their orientation. So for them to actually join the team, they've come, they've looked, they like what they see. So now set up that time for them to come and be part of what you are doing. And so that you show them where everything is. Not everybody, for example, with children and youth, who joins there has actually walked into Studio 4. They maybe have just been in this building, and so they don't know. If they haven't got any kids, they might never have walked there. I still, to this day, don't really know how to make the coffee out there, for example. So just because somebody has drunk coffee and tea doesn't mean to say they know how the coffee machine works. I know it's, again, like Alan said, it's not rocket science, but we need to talk everybody through things when you orientate them. Then you want to develop a ministry growth path. So somebody's joined the team. So what are you going to do? Well, first of all, you're going to put them on a team, aren't you? Or maybe you're going to give them a project. You're going to put them on a rota to serve regularly. But then, as they're serving and they're faithful, how are you going to raise them up further? In kids ministry, you might give them an object lesson, for example. You might get them to teach. They might become a weekly team leader in one of the other, in here on hospitality or on the door or something. What is your growth path for somebody to be raised up to be the leader of the area that you oversee? Alan and I, through our whole journey from, when we were first leaders, was always to train people up so that we grew people that would outdo us. That was our whole thing all the time. Every area that we served, led, it was always to raise people up so that they would outdo us. And we used to say, we always want leaders to go further than us, and that's still where we are. We want people to go further than we ever went, and we need to provide the place for people to do that. So 3 phases of training. So again, we've talked about observe and orientation. Then we have this show how training, or when we talk about the teaching with the church building system training, it's that whole thing of I do, you watch. So I will do first, so I'll show you how the coffee machine works and you watch me. Then the next thing is we do it together. So let's do it together. I will help you, you do it and I'll tell you what to do, kind of thing. And then you do it and I watch. So the next week, you do it and I'll see and give feedback or evaluate, one of the 5 E's. And then they can do it. Then the next thing is they need to be ready to train somebody else. And obviously some of these things don't necessarily happen 4 weeks in a row, because in ministry, there is time. But it's that whole thing of we don't just dump people in and go, okay, you get on with it, you're doing it this week. But we actually make sure people have the tools, they're trained, and they know exactly what to do and what is expected of them. So, churches grow best, so guidelines. Churches grow best when people serve according to their spiritual gifts, so we discover their gifts. People want to serve in an area that interests them. So again, part of the shape profile, is finding out what interests them, what do they like, what do they have a passion for. People want to serve with people they enjoy. Do you know, in 27 years of leading a church, the main reason people have left church is not because of the teaching or disagreement with the teaching or they've fallen out with Alan or I. The main reason people have left church is because they don't get on with somebody they serve with. Now, I find that sad, but it's because they haven't, they get annoyed or they get upset with somebody, and then they don't know how to handle it, and they don't say something, and we find out later that that's why they've left the church. If somebody, it doesn't get on with somebody, then just move them. You know, yes, there has to be a working out and a forgiveness maybe, and a working through the situation. But we work better when we serve with people that we like and that we enjoy serving with. And so help your teams to function well. People ought to be treated like servants of the king. You know, we're all served. We are all part of the kingdom of God, and we all serve. So we all need to treat one another well. And then we celebrate one another. You know, celebrate. So, you know, at the end of a Sunday, you know, get your team together and say, hey, well done, great job. You know, maybe give somebody specific feedback. It was really good how you handled that situation when it happened, you know, and give a little bit of detail. One of the things that I have learned is that Alan and I, being that little bit older, we just like to get on with it. But we found that younger people, as they come up, they want more feedback and they want to know more information. And so they want to know, what is it that I have done well, so they can do that again. But they also want to know, what is it that I haven't done well, because they want to change their behavior. They genuinely want to know that, you know. So make sure you celebrate people. You know, do you know when the birthdays are of people on your team? You know, do you know, just simple things like that, so that you celebrate, you are thankful. Send them a message afterwards. Wow, that was an amazing job you did this week. You know, maybe pick out one or two of your team members, you know, each week that you could send a message to. But don't ignore those that don't do good. Find something, find a reason to celebrate every single person at some point across the month. A person's interests may change over time, so encourage them to change ministries. You know, if somebody's time serving has, you know, you realize they haven't quite got the same energy or the same excitement, you know, maybe it's somewhere else that they need to serve. You know, so help them find the right place. You know, when somebody wants to leave a team, don't just say, oh, goodbye. Actually, connect them with whoever they need to be connected with in the church, so that they can join the right team. If a person just suddenly drops out of team, suddenly says, I don't want to be on the rota anymore, there could be a danger that they're dropping out of church. So this is where all the systems work together. So if that happens with a team, then you need to let the pastoral care team know, or the pastor know, or somebody know that there might be something going on in somebody's life, so that everybody is working together. Remember, balance is important for volunteers, just as it is for, you know, pastors and leaders. If somebody serves every single week, they will get burnt out. And it's really important not to burn your team out. You know, when a church is small and you're church planting, Alan and I, we burnt leaders out because you needed people and it wasn't good. And we learnt very early on. That's why we built in our family days. And once a month we'd have family days, because it was so that our children's ministry leaders didn't get burnt out. because that's the main issue that we had. So we always say that you shouldn't, personally, we always say that somebody should only serve 3 times a month at the most, so that they always, at least one Sunday, are sitting in a service receiving. And so when you think about the people on your teams, are there people who, all the time they want to be out serving, but you need to be careful because they'll burn themselves out. And so you have to encourage them to come and sit in the service, because you'll always get people like that who just want to keep serving. But you want them to receive as well, because they need to know what the pastor is preaching and ministering. So an important measure of a church's strength is the number of servants, leaders, and givers. So knowing how many people are serving in the church, taking their place. Remember that rule that Alan was talking about, the Pareto principle, and thinking about how many people do you need to serve in the church. So we're just going to begin now looking at some of the questions that we have. Do you want to go back to the first, to 5? Do you want to go back there first? Well, so first of all, I'm going to ask the first question is, do you have an assistant? Do you have an assistant for the team that you lead? If you do, write their name down. If you don't have an assistant, just think about the team that you oversee, or the group that you lead, or the ministry that you lead or you're part of, and go, who with the people I have could be my assistant? If you are part of a team and you're not leading that team, who is one person in the church that you could invite to be part of the team that you are on? And write their name down.
So on the board behind us, we've got a few questions. Now, some of these will just relate to the pastors. For example, the one about sermons. But I want you to, on your table, I want you to have a bit of a discussion and write some thoughts down, answering some of these reflection questions. We've talked about the size of our church. So what do you see it as? I've quoted a number because that's kind of vaguely my thoughts, but we've got another church here. What sort of leadership should you practice at this size? Think about the number of leaders and do the calculations. What's that going to cost you, and new skills? Maybe that might be a better answer around the group than what sermons do you need to preach or how much extra time. So in your groups, I want you to sort of have a reflection on some of these together. Because this is going to help you think about your teams, which we're going to do the next bit, okay? So I'm going to take 10 minutes. I want you to just write some ideas and thoughts down on your table, looking at these questions here. Now, they're not all relevant to all of you, but just want you to begin to think and begin to assess. Okay? Any questions? Any? There.
These questions relate to are at the end of the session Alan did. Okay, so go back to those ones.
Okay.
Sorry.
And then we're going to look at reflection questions that from the session Claire's just done.
Okay. So, did anybody do any working out of the Pareto principle as to how many leaders you would need?
To speak. I think we've just realised, just talking about our grow group system, and given how many people there are in the church, that we do not have enough grow groups. If you were going to have a 1-to-5 ratio, if there were 200 adults here, we really need 40 small groups. And that might in part account for why they're not as well attended as we'd like them to be, because they feel a bit crowded and people haven't got room to be able to say and to receive what they aspire to. So yeah, that's what Scrab does. Like Hope's pointed out, that our grow group really is at the point where it needs to multiply and become 2 or 3 small groups actually. So we need to have 2 or 3 leaders within that group. So that's just a small example.
Okay.
Hope's encouraging me to share a bit about our church, which is it's just on a different scale, but actually the ratios are very similar. So we're sort of 40 to 50 with a leadership team of 9 people, and I kind of sat here thinking, well, what you're saying reinforces exactly what we're kind of here for, to look at how we grow that leadership team, because if we are to double in size in the next 12 months, say, then we are going to need a bigger team. There's more, there's a need to grow, isn't there, to get those ratios right for that next growth step.
Great. It's great. Anybody else?
Just as an example to follow on from what Rachel was actually saying, so some of you probably know this, but the Keys group has grown massively over the last couple of years, because there are a lot of people coming into the Keys. There are a lot of new blocks being built. The Christians that are already there, so they're coming in. So we've got 50 on the list, but not everybody is actually coming to the group. However, Christmas, and it was something that Pastor Mark had said, think about the doubling. And I'm going, what happens if we go from 50 to 100 in this next year? We need more people. Now, Judy and Brian have been with me, if you like, throughout the growth. And so we had already got 2 options on a Monday night, online with me, in person with Judy and Brian. What we decided to do was, because a faithful couple was Lisa and Ronnie, and they have started to now we asked them to become leaders, and they are leading the Wednesday group, and so they lead online as well. So, but as I'm sitting here and thinking about that, the ratio that I got was 1 to 12, 12 being a maximum. So that only really satisfies, if you like, 36 in the group. If we've got 3 groups now that they have the option to join each week, do you want to go online on Monday, in person on Monday, or online on Wednesday? And we put a vote, and this last week there were half of them went on in person, half online on the Wednesday. I didn't get anybody in my group. That was fine. That was fine. But it made me think and be praying about, who was doing, and maybe we need to move it to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, if you like. But my thought process now is, who else in the group can lead another night, so that there is, the growth, because we are getting as well. We're getting the point where, in the block that I live in, we now have 5 people who are coming to this church. There might need to be per block. This is the vision, per block out there, a grow group per block. So that's the vision for the future.
Awesome.
Yeah, so in the, we're not going to do the pastoral care session this time, but in there it talks about how the small groups are your first, the first pastoral care point, especially when you have a larger church. And it does talk about, Jesus had 12 disciples, but most people can only have a meaningful relationship and follow up outside. So if you think about somebody who's leading a group, they've got their family, they've got their wider family, they've got people they're relating to at work, they've got friends in church who might not be in their group, and now they're leading a group as well. So capacity-wise, most people can handle 10 to 12 people and have a meaningful relationship with them and know what is going on in their lives. So if we start with that as a starting point, then from a point of the life groups or grow group systems, that then gives an idea, like you've been thinking of the 12, how many grow groups you would need. But it's also an indication of why people aren't connecting with the grow groups, is because there is not relationship, because the person who's leading it, you know, if 5 people are put in, and this is why the life groups broke down, and we're talking about Kingdom of Faith down in Horsham, is that we had Alan and I were given 40 people to add to the 8 groups that we oversaw. That was putting 5 people into each one in 1 week. Then the following week we had to do the same again because they were seeing so many people getting saved. And, you know, if one person is put in your group 1 week, you can go, oh, I'll meet you at the sound desk after the church service. But you can't say that to 5 people. I'll meet you at the sound desk and somehow connect with all 5. You can try, but it's harder. And so that's why the groups in that way are, you know, it's better to go relationship-wise to keep it. From the Parento principle, from the Parento principle, if there were 500 adults in this church, then you would need 100 leaders. So 100... We could all laugh. But 100 leaders, so let me just clarify what we mean by leader. We mean somebody who is either the leader of the team, or they are a weekly leader within that team. Okay, so not somebody who's just part of the team, but somebody who takes a leadership role of some kind. Because some people panic and go, oh my goodness, leaders, and they think way up here. When we say leaders, we're talking about anybody who takes a leadership responsibility. So 500 adults is 100 leaders, and then you would need 20 leaders of leaders. And then 750 adults is 150 leaders, 1,000 adults is 200 leaders. So you can see how it grows very fast. And that's why I asked you to write down at the beginning who is your assistant, or who could be your assistant, or who could you ask to join the team. Because all the time, we need to be thinking growth and multiplication, growth and multiplication, growth and multiplication.
And we're fighting against a culture where people keep saying, I don't want to be a leader. I'm not a leader. I don't want to be a leader. No, leadership. No. And they're going, no, I'm too busy. I'm too whatever. And it's like, no. The Lord has a calling on your life. The Lord needs you. The Lord's called you, and he has a plan. And somehow, if you will follow the Lord, he will make everything else work. It's time for a break, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay, 15 minutes.
We all have. That's why we all laugh.
That's something you expect in high school.